They called him the waiter slayer of Manhattan. Harrison Brown wasn't just a billionaire. He was a predator in a three-piece suit, a man who visited the city's most expensive restaurants for one reason only: to destroy the staff. He had broken grown men, reduced managers to tears, and gotten people fired for serving water that was 2 degrees too warm. But on a rainy Tuesday in November, he met Maya. She was nobody. Just a broke student trying to survive. He thought he could crush her. He was wrong. She didn't fight back with anger. She fought back with a secret. And when she finally whispered 7 specific words to him, the entire restaurant fell silent, and the man who owned half the city dropped to his knees. What did she say? And why did it change everything? If you walked down Fifth Avenue in New York City, past the tourist traps and flashing lights, then turned onto the cobblestones of a quiet, unassuming side street near Central Park, you would find the Obsidian Dot. It wasn't a place for normal people. There were no prices on the menu. The lighting was always dim. The jazz was always live, but barely audible. And the air smelled of old money, mahogany, and truffle oil. It was the kind of place where senators made handshake deals and tech CEOs celebrated IPOs. But every Tuesday at exactly 7 p.m., the atmosphere inside the Obsidian changed. The air grew heavy. The kitchen staff stopped laughing. The busboy's hands trembled as he polished the silverware for the 3rd time. Because Tuesday was Harrison Brown's night. Harrison Brown was a real estate mogul worth an estimated $4.2 billion. He was 70 years old, though he looked 50, preserved by the best doctors money could buy and a heart made entirely of ice. He was handsome in a terrifying way. Silver hair slicked back, eyes the color of steel, and a jawline that always seemed clenched. He didn't come to the Obsidian for the food. Chef Jean-Luc, a man with 2 Michelin stars, knew that well. Harrison came for the sport, and the sport was humiliation. Table 4 needs to be reset. The floor manager, Gustavo, hissed into his headset, sweat already beading on his forehead. He's 2 minutes away. I want the tablecloth ironed on the table. If there's a single wrinkle, heads will roll. The staff scrambled like sailors on a sinking ship. Who's taking in tonight? A distinctly terrified whisper came from the back. It was Timothy, a waiter who had been with the restaurant for 5 years. Not me, said Sarah, clutching her tray. Last time he told me my voice was grating and offered me $5,000 to never speak in his presence again. I cried for 3 days. It's Kevin's turn, Gustavo said, checking his watch. Kevin, a sturdy young man who played semi-pro rugby on weekends, went pale. He adjusted his tie and swallowed hard. I can handle him, he said, forcing confidence. He's just a grumpy old man. At exactly 7 p.m., the heavy oak doors swung open. Harrison Brown didn't walk. He glided. 2 bodyguards flanked him but stayed near the entrance, silent sentinels. Harrison wore a charcoal bespoke suit that cost more than most people's cars. He didn't look at the hostess who greeted him. He didn't acknowledge anyone at all. He walked straight to table 4, the best table in the house, secluded yet commanding a view of the entire room, and sat down. He didn't check his phone. He didn't open the menu. He simply placed his hands on the white tablecloth and waited. Kevin approached, taking a deep breath. Good evening, Mr. Brown. Welcome back. You're sweating, Harrison said. His voice wasn't loud. It was a low, smooth baritone that carried effortlessly. Kevin froze. I beg your pardon, sir. You are perspiring. It's disgusting, Harrison said, studying him with a mix of boredom and revulsion. It indicates a lack of control, a lack of hygiene. Do you intend to drip into my consomme? No, sir. Of course not, Kevin stammered. It's just the kitchen is a bit warm. Harrison lifted his water glass and held it up to the candlelight. Tell me, he said calmly, what is your name? Kevin, sir. Well, Kevin, this glass has a smudge. Kevin leaned in. I don't see one, sir. I polished it myself. Harrison released the glass. Gravity did the rest. It didn't shatter. But ice water spilled across the pristine tablecloth and splashed onto Kevin's apron. The restaurant went silent. Other diners stared at their plates, pretending not to notice that this was the Brown effect. You didn't intervene. You survived, Harrison said calmly. And now there's a smudge. And a mess. He glanced at the soaked tablecloth with mild irritation. You are incompetent. Kevin, you've ruined my appetite before I've even ordered. Harrison snapped his fingers. Gustavo appeared instantly. Get this amateur out of my sight, Harrison said, brushing a microscopic drop of water from his cuff. And if you don't have a server who understands the most basic concept of elegance, I will buy this building and turn it into a parking lot by tomorrow morning. Do you understand? Yes, Mr. Brown. Immediately, Mr. Brown, Gustavo said. Bowing, he grabbed Kevin by the arm and dragged the humiliated man into the kitchen. Harrison Brown leaned back in his chair, a cruel, satisfied smirk playing across his face. He picked up a breadstick and snapped it in half. The sharp crack echoed through the silent room, like a gunshot. He enjoyed this. It was the only thing he felt anymore. In the chaos of the kitchen, Gustavo was hyperventilating. I fired Kevin, he muttered, pacing near the dishwashing station. Kevin was my best server. Who do I send out now? Timothy? No, he hates Timothy. Sarah? She's too fragile. In the corner of the kitchen, near the service elevator, stood Maya Lindley. Maya had been working at the Obsidian for exactly 4 days. She wasn't a server. She was a back waiter, a runner who carried heavy trays and refilled water glasses. She was 23, with dark, intelligent eyes and hair pulled back into a severe, practical bun. Her uniform was clean, but if you looked closely, you'd notice the cuffs were slightly frayed. She'd bought the white shirt at a thrift store. Maya wasn't worried about Harrison Brown's billions. She was worried about the $48,000 hospital bill sitting on her kitchen counter in Queens. Her younger brother, Leo, was 9 years old. He'd been born with a congenital heart defect. The surgeries never seemed to end. The insurance had capped out months ago. Maya worked 3 jobs, mornings at a library, afternoons tutoring, and nights at the Obsidian. She slept 4 hours a day. She ate leftovers from the restaurant kitchen. She was tired, not regular tired, bone-deep tired. The kind that makes you fearless because you have nothing left to lose. I'll do it, Maya said. The kitchen went quiet. Gustavo stopped pacing and stared at her. You're a runner, Maya, he said. You've never served a fine dining table in your life. I know the menu, Maya replied steadily. I've memorized the wine list. And I'm not afraid of him. Everyone is afraid of him, Gustavo shouted. He eats people like you for breakfast. If you mess this up, he won't just fire you, he'll blacklist you from every restaurant in New York. He's done it before. Maya stepped forward and smoothed her apron. Mr. Gustavo, you don't have anyone else. Timothy is hiding in the walk-in freezer. Sarah is crying in the bathroom. You need a body. I'm a body. Gustavo looked at the swinging doors, then back at Maya. He saw something in her eyes. It wasn't confidence. It was desperation hardened into steel. Fine, he groaned, rubbing his temples. But listen to me. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact. Pour from the right, clear from the left. If he insults you, you swallow it. If he throws wine on you, you thank him for the drink. Do you understand? We need this night to end without a lawsuit. I understand, Maya said. What she didn't tell Gustavo was the truth. She didn't tell him that she recognized the name Harrison Brown, not from the business pages, but from a stack of legal documents her mother had kept in a shoebox under her bed before she died. Maya knew things about Harrison Brown that the tabloids didn't. She grabbed a fresh tablecloth, a bucket of ice, and a bottle of Pellegrino. She checked her reflection in the stainless steel refrigerator door. She looked exhausted but composed. For Leo, she whispered to herself. Then she pushed through the double doors and walked into the lion's den. The dining room was still tense. The air felt thin. Harrison sat at table 4, staring out the window at the rain, his fingers tapping softly against the table. He looked like a king bored with his own kingdom. Maya approached. She didn't rush. She moved with a strange, calm grace. She didn't have the polished, robotic precision of the other servers. She moved like a real person. "Good evening, Mr. Brown," she said. Harrison didn't turn his head. "You're new," he said flatly. "And you're a woman." Gustavo must be getting desperate. "I'm Maya," she replied, ignoring the jab. "I'll be taking care of you tonight." She began resetting the table. Her hands were steady. She laid the fresh cloth and smoothed it with deliberate, efficient strokes. She placed the silverware without a sound. Finally, Harrison turned to look at her. He scanned her from head to toe, his eyes narrowing when they caught the frayed cuff of her shirt. "That shirt is cheap," Harrison said. "Poly blend. Likely secondhand. It smells of detergent and poverty." He waited for her to flinch, for the blush, the stutter, the watery eyes. Maya finished placing the fork. She straightened and met his gaze. She didn't smile, but she didn't frown either. "It's cotton, actually," she said softly. "And it smells like lavender. My brother likes the scent." She paused, just long enough to breathe. "Would you like to see the wine list, or will you be starting with your usual scotch?" Harrison blinked. It was a micro-reaction, barely visible, but it was there. Surprised she hadn't apologized. She hadn't defended herself. She had corrected him and moved on. "You have an attitude," Harrison said, his voice dropping an octave. "I don't like attitude." "I have a job to do, Mr. Brown," Maya replied evenly. "And I'd like to do it well so you can enjoy your evening." Harrison leaned back, crossing his arms. The game had begun. "Fine," he said, a cruel glint flashing in his eyes. "I want the 82 Petrus. But I want you to decant it here at the table. And if you break the cork, well, that bottle costs more than your entire year's salary. So I suggest you don't." He was setting her up to fail. The corks of vintage wines were notoriously fragile, often crumbling to dust. It required the hands of a master sommelier, not a runner with 4 days of experience. Maya nodded. "Excellent choice." She turned to walk away, and for the first time, Harrison felt a strange prickle at the back of his neck. There was something about her walk, the slight tilt of her head, something hauntingly familiar. He couldn't place it. He shook it off. She was just another ant to be crushed. And tonight, he was in the mood to stomp. The bottle of 1982 Chateau Petrus arrived at the table in the hands of the sommelier, who looked like he was attending a funeral. He wore white gloves, his face pale, and placed the bottle on the garden, the small side table beside Maya. "Good luck," the sommelier whispered, his voice trembling, before retreating into the shadows. Harrison Brown watched Maya like a hawk circling a field mouse. He glanced at his Patek Philippe. "The wine needs to breathe," he said coolly. "But if you take too long, the sediment will disturb the balance. You have 3 minutes to open and decant. If a single crumb of cork falls into the bottle, I'll send it back and you'll be paying for it. That's roughly $5,000. He tilted his head. "Do you have $5,000, Maya?" "No, sir," Maya said quietly. "Then I suggest you don't miss." An entire section of the restaurant stopped eating. A couple at table 5, celebrating their anniversary, set their forks down to watch. The tension was suffocating. Maya reached for the wine key. Most waiters would have used a standard corkscrew, drilling straight into the center. But Maya knew a cork from 1982 would be soft, almost like wet cardboard. A normal screw would shred it. She reached into her apron and pulled out a different tool. It wasn't standard issue. It was an Also a two-pronged cork puller she'd bought years ago for $3 at a pawn shop. Back when her mother was still alive and teaching her the art of service. Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Are you ambitious?" he asked, "or foolish?" Maya didn't answer. She focused. She clamped the bottle gently between her arm and her side, stabilizing it. She slid the longer prong between the cork and the glass, then the shorter one. She rocked it back and forth. Slowly. The friction was terrifying. One wrong move and the cork would drop into the bottle, ruining everything. For Leo, she thought. Just focus on the glass. Ignore the eyes. She twisted and pulled. It felt like surgery. The cork groaned a dry, rasping sound. Harrison leaned forward, eyes gleaming, waiting for the crumble. Waiting for the failure that would justify his cruelty. But the cork held with a soft pop that sounded almost like a sigh of relief. Maya eased it free, perfectly intact. She placed it on a small silver dish and presented it to him. "The cork is sound, sir," she said steadily, even as her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She picked up the crystal decanter and positioned a candle behind the neck of the bottle, the old-school way to watch for sediment. She poured. A dark ribbon of ruby liquid flowed into the crystal. She poured slowly, steadily, without spilling a drop. Stopping at the exact moment the first grain of sediment reached the neck. She swirled the decanter once, letting the aromas of black truffle and dark cherry drift toward him. Then poured a small taste into his glass. Harrison stared at the wine. He stared at the cork. He searched for a flaw, for a reason to explode. He lifted the glass, swirled it, and took a sip. It was perfect. He set the glass down. The disappointment on his face was unmistakable. He hadn't wanted the wine to be good. He'd wanted the girl to be bad. "It's adequate," he grunted, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a compliment. "Though you took 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Borderline slow." "I wanted to ensure clarity, sir," Maya said calmly. "Don't talk back," he snapped. "Pour the glass and get out of my sight while I look at the menu." Maya filled the glass and stepped away. The moment she reached the kitchen, her knees nearly buckled. She grabbed the edge of the stainless steel counter to steady herself. "You did it," Timothy whispered, peeking out from the dish pit. "I've never seen anyone use an asso like that. Who taught you?" Maya touched the locket hidden beneath her uniform. "My mother," she whispered. "Well, watch out," Timothy warned. "He's not done. When he doesn't win round 1, he makes round 2 hell." Timothy was right. Harrison Brown wasn't just hungry for dinner. He was hungry for dominance. He sat there sipping his $5,000 wine, seething. This girl, this nobody with the frayed cuffs and tired eyes, had challenged his authority. Simply by being competent. It stirred something he'd spent 30 years trying to bury, a defiance he hadn't seen since the late 90s. Since her. He shoved the memory away. Feelings were for the poor. He was Harrison Brown. He owned the block. He owned the building. And tonight, he was going to break this girl. The next hour was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Harrison ordered the lobster thermidor, a rich, delicate dish. When Maya brought it out, steaming and fragrant, he took one bite and spat it into his napkin. "Cold," he lied. "Ice cold. Do you have nerve damage in your hands? Can you not feel temperature?" "I apologize, sir," Maya said, even though the plate was burning her fingers. "I'll have the chef prepare a fresh one." "No," Harrison snapped. "I don't want another. My appetite is gone. Take it away." He ordered a steak next. Rare. When it arrived rare, he sent it back, claiming it was raw. When it returned medium rare, he said it was leather. He made her run to the kitchen 12 times in 20 minutes. He demanded freshly cracked pepper, then waved her away after one twist, accusing her of drowning his food. He asked for water with no ice, then demanded ice. then demanded a new glass because the ice was cloudy. Through it all, Maya remained a statue, polite, efficient, apologizing for mistakes she hadn't made. But inside, she was unraveling. Every time she returned to the kitchen, she checked her phone. No messages from the hospital. That was good. But the silence was loud. She needed this tip. If Harrison left a standard 20% on a bill, already climbing past $6,000, that was $1,200. 2 weeks of Leo's medication. She couldn't lose it. She had to swallow the poison. Around 9 p.m., the restaurant began to empty. Only a handful of tables remained. Harrison was on his third glass of wine. The alcohol hadn't softened him. It had sharpened his cruelty. He waved Maya over. He didn't look at her face. He looked at her shoes. They were black, sensible, non-slip shoes, but old. The leather was scuffed at the toe. "How much do they pay you here?" Harrison asked suddenly. Maya blinked, caught off guard. I don't think that's relevant, sir." "Minimum wage," Harrison scoffed. "Plus tips. So you grovel for scraps. You dance like a monkey for people like me, hoping a few coins fall from our pockets." "I work for a living, Mr. Brown," Maya said evenly. "There's no shame in that." "There is shame," he sneered, "in being bottom feeders." He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a money clip, thick with $100 bills. He peeled off 5 of them, $500. He dropped them. The bills fluttered down, landing on the dark wood floor beside Maya's scuffed shoes. "Oops," Harrison said, his voice dripping with mock innocence. "I seem to have dropped some trash." He looked at her. "Pick it up." Maya stared at the money. Then she looked at him. "Pick it up," Harrison repeated, leaning forward. His eyes were dead cold. "But not with your hands. You're a server. Your hands are for serving. If you want that money, pick it up with your teeth." The restaurant went deathly silent. Gustavo froze at the host stand. The couple at table 5 gasped. This wasn't just rude anymore. This was dehumanizing. "Mr. Brown," Gustavo started, stepping forward. "Please, that's quite—" "Gustavo," Harrison snapped, never breaking eye contact with Maya. "I am conducting a social experiment. Everyone has a price. I want to know hers." He glanced at the money on the floor, then back at her. $500. Probably more than you make in a week. All you have to do is kneel. Kneel down and take it. Prove to me that you know your place." Maya stared at the bills. $500. It would pay for the consultation with the new cardiologist. It would buy Leo the Lego set he'd been staring at for months. For a moment, just a split second, she considered it. Poverty does that to you. It strips away pride until survival is all that's left. Then she thought of her mother, Catherine, who worked double shifts as a seamstress until her fingers bled. Catherine, who even when they were eating rice and beans by candlelight, because the power had been cut, still taught Maya to set the table like royalty, dignity. Catherine had said, "Is the one thing they can't rip from you. Maya, never give it to them for free. Never give it to them at all." Maya lifted her head. Her eyes were dry, but burning with a fire Harrison hadn't expected. "No," she said. Harrison's smile flickered. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Maya stepped back. "I'm here to serve you dinner, Mr. Brown. I'm not here to be your entertainment. And I'm certainly not here to be your dog." Harrison's face flushed crimson. He wasn't used to hearing that word. No. He slammed his hand on the table. Silverware rattling. "You insolent little brat," he hissed. "Do you know who I am? I could buy this restaurant and fire you within the hour. I could make sure you never work in this city again. Pick up the money." "No," Maya said again, louder this time. "Gustavo." Harrison roared. "Get over here." The manager rushed over, trembling. "Mr. Brown, please. Let's calm down." "Fire her," Harrison spat, pointing at Maya. "Fire her right now, in front of me, or I pull my investment from your holding group." I know the owners, Gustavo. I will bankrupt this place. Gustavo looked at Harrison. Then at Maya. He looked terrified. He had kids. He had a mortgage. Maya, he whispered, his voice breaking. Please. Just apologize to him. I won't apologize for having dignity, Maya said. Gustavo swallowed hard, tears filling his eyes. He couldn't meet her gaze. Then I have no choice, he said quietly. Maya. You're fired. Please, just go. Harrison leaned back, a smug, victorious smile spreading across his face. He had won. He always won. He had broken the staff. He had asserted his power. And now the rat would scurry away. Go on, he sneered, flicking his hand as if shooing a fly. Back to the gutter. And leave the money. You didn't earn it. Maya stood still. The uniform felt heavy. The room spun. She'd lost the job. She'd lost the money. Leo would be disappointed, but she wasn't leaving. Not yet. She took a slow breath, inhaling the scent of expensive wine and old money that filled the room. She looked at Harrison. Brown really looked at him. Past the suit. Past the rage. Past the billions. She saw the loneliness. The bitterness of a man who had chosen gold over love every single time. And she recognized him. Not as the billionaire real estate mogul, but as the man in the photograph her mother had hidden in a Bible for 23 years. A photograph of a young man smiling beside a beautiful woman in the rain. Maya reached up and unpinned her hair. It fell around her shoulders in dark, cascading waves. She stepped closer to the table. One of the bodyguards moved forward, but Harrison raised a hand. He wanted to hear her beg. Maya didn't beg. She leaned in so only he could hear her. Her voice didn't shake. It was lethal. Restaurant was silent. So quiet you could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Maya placed both hands on the faucet table and looked straight into Harrison's steel gray eyes. You think you can buy people? She whispered. You think because you have money, you don't have to be human. You think everyone is disposable. I don't think, Harrison sneered. I know, you are proof of that. Now get out. Maya shook her head slowly. A sad, knowing smile touched her lips. You don't recognize me, do you? She asked softly. Harrison frowned. He squinted at her. With her hair down. The shape of her face had changed. The harsh restaurant lighting caught the curve of her cheekbone just right. Something stirred an echo, a shadow of a memory buried beneath decades of hostile takeovers and boardroom wars. Why would I recognize a waitress? He scoffed, though his voice lacked its usual venom. Because you used to love her, Maya said. Harrison froze. What? Maya leaned closer. The air between them crackled. Gustavo stood rigid, barely breathing. The bodyguards exchanged confused glances. Then Maya delivered the blow. 7 words. 7 words that carried 23 years of silence, pain, and a promise made at a deathbed. My mother Catherine died waiting for you. Harrison Brown stopped breathing. The world tilted. The city noise vanished. The restaurant vanished. Everything vanished, except Maya's eyes. Catherine. The name struck his chest like a physical blow. Catherine Lindley. The art student. The village. 1999. The rain. He hadn't been a billionaire then. Ruthless, yes. Ambitious, yes. But still human. He'd met her in a coffee shop. They'd fallen in love with a ferocity that terrified him. She was the only person who ever made him laugh. The only person who didn't care about his money. Then his father had threatened to cut him off. The board warned him that marrying a nobody art student would destroy his merger with the Vanderhoven family. So he chose. He chose the merger. He chose the money. He left Catherine a note and a check for $10,000 and never looked back. He buried that part of his life in concrete and built a skyscraper over it. He never knew she was pregnant. Catherine, Harrison whispered. His voice didn't sound like his own. It was old, broken. She died 3 months ago, Maya said. A single tear escaped and slid down her cheek. Cancer. She worked until the day she went into hospice. She never spent your check, by the way. She tore it up. Harrison stared at Maya. Really stared. And then he saw it, Catherine's chin. Catherine's fire. And his own eyes staring back at him. His hand began to tremble. He reached for her, fingers shaking uncontrollably. You. He stammered. You are. I'm the daughter you left behind so you could become a billionaire, Maya said, her voice breaking with grief and rage intertwined. I have a brother, Leo. He's 9. He's sick. And I work 3 jobs to keep him alive while you throw $500 on the floor and tell me to bark like a dog. Harrison looked down. The $100 bills no longer looked real. They looked like Monopoly money. Like trash. He looked at the frayed cuffs of her shirt. My daughter, he realized. This is my daughter, and she's been serving me wine. Nausea hit him hard. The cruelty. The insults. The humiliation. The command and kneel. It all came crashing down at once. Like judgment. He'd tried to degrade a stranger only to discover he'd been degrading his own flesh and blood. Harrison Brown, the Wolf of Manhattan, felt his legs give out. He sagged in his chair, color draining from his face. He clutched his chest, not from a heart attack, but from the violent shattering of a heart that hadn't truly beaten in 30 years. Maya, he gasped. Don't, she said. Stepping back, she wiped her face. I don't want your pity, and I don't want your money. I just wanted you to know. You didn't break me tonight, Harrison. You broke yourself. She untied her apron and laid it on the table, right beside the untouched glass of Petrus. I quit, she said to Gustavo, who stood frozen, mouth open. Then Maya turned and walked toward the door. Her head was high. She was walking back into the rain, back to her debt. Back to her sick brother, back to her hard, unforgiving life. But she was walking free. But she was walking away a winner. Harrison sat frozen in his chair. Wait, he screamed. The sound tore through the restaurant, raw and desperate, echoing off the mahogany walls. He tried to stand, but his legs betrayed him. He stumbled forward, crashing into the table. The crystal decanter toppled and shattered. The 1982 Petrus, thousands of dollars worth of wine, spilled across the floor, spreading like a deep crimson wound. The candles flickered wildly. Wait! He screamed again. He shoved past his bodyguards, ignoring the sharp crunch of glass beneath his expensive shoes. He burst through the restaurant doors and out into the rain. Maya! She was already halfway down the block, walking fast, shoulders hunched against the cold wind. Harrison ran. He hadn't run in 20 years. His lungs burned. Rain soaked his bespoke suit in seconds, ruining the silk, but he didn't care. Maya, please! He shouted as he caught up to her. He grabbed her arm, not in anger, but in pure desperation. She spun around, eyes blazing. Let go of me. I didn't know, Harrison sobbed. Rain mixed with the tears streaming down his face. I didn't know, Catherine. She never told you because you never asked. Maya yelled, yanking her arm free. You left. You chose your tower. You don't get to come back now just because you feel guilty. I don't want you back. Harrison collapsed to his knees on the wet pavement. People stopped. Passers-by stared. The great Harrison Brown Wolf of Manhattan was kneeling in a puddle, destroying a $10,000 suit, begging a waitress for forgiveness. I want to help, he pleaded. You said there's a brother, Leo. He's sick. Maya stopped at the sound of Leo's name. Her anger cracked just enough for exhaustion to pour through. He needs a heart, she whispered, her voice breaking. He needs a transplant. We can't afford the list. We can't afford the medication. He's going to die, Harrison. Just like Mom. Harrison looked up at her. For the first time in his life, he saw something worth more than any deal, a chance at redemption. "No," he said fiercely. "No, he won't. I swear on my life, Maya, he will not die." His hand shook as he pulled his phone from his pocket. "Who are you calling?" Maya asked, shivering. "Everyone," Harrison said. "I'm calling everyone." The emergency room at Mount Sinai Hospital was chaos, gurneys flying past, nurses shouting, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. But at 10:45 p.m., a hush fell over the intake desk. Harrison Brown walked in. He was still wearing his tuxedo trousers and dress shirt, both soaked with rain and streaked with mud. His jacket was gone. His tie hung loose around his neck. He looked like a man who had survived a hurricane, but his voice carried the authority of a general. "I need the chief of cardiology." Harrison barked at the intake nurse. Now, the nurse, a tired woman named Brenda, peered at him over her glasses. "Sir, you need to wait in line like everyone else unless you're bleeding. Take a seat." Harrison didn't blink. He slammed his black American Express Centurion card onto the counter. "My name is Harrison Brown. I am a primary donor to this hospital's new wing. I am currently on the phone with the chairman of the board. And if Dr. Elias Vane is not standing in this lobby in 3 minutes, I will defund your entire research department. Do you understand?" Brenda stared at the card, then at the phone in his hand. She reached for the paging system. Behind him, Maya stood shivering, clutching Leo. The boy was asleep, pale, his lips tinged blue, his breathing shallow and rattling. "Harrison," Maya said quietly, the first time she'd spoken his name without venom. He's really hot. His fever's spiking." Harrison turned. The monster from the obsidian room was gone. In his place stood a terrified grandfather. He pulled off his wet shirt, leaving only a white undershirt, and wrapped the expensive sodden silk around Leo's small body. "Hold on." "Leo," Harrison whispered, his hand hovering protectively over the boy's back. "Help is coming." Dr. Elias Vane, the top pediatric cardiologist in the state, arrived in 2 minutes. Still in scrubs, lab coat half-buttoned, confusion written all over his face. "Mr. Brown," the doctor said, eyeing the soaked, disheveled billionaire. "What's going on?" "This is my grandson," Harrison said, his voice cracking. "He has hypoplastic left heart syndrome. He's in heart failure. He needs a transplant, doctor. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight." "Mr. Brown," Dr. Vane said gently, "you know the UNO's list doesn't work like that. Even with your money, we can't manufacture a heart." "I don't care about the list," Harrison shouted, causing security to step forward. "Find a way," Harrison said hoarsely. "Fly one in. Call Europe. I'll pay for the jet. I'll pay the donor family's mortgage for the rest of their lives. Just save him." Maya stepped forward and placed her hand gently on Harrison's chest. "Stop," she said softly. Harrison looked at her. "You can't bully death." "Harrison," she said, tears streaming down her face. "It doesn't work like the waiters." Something inside him collapsed. Harrison slumped against the reception desk and buried his face in his hands. For the first time in his life, his billions meant nothing. They were useless paper. He was facing the one thing he could never buy. Time. They admitted Leo immediately. The next 48 hours blurred. Together, machines beeping, sterile wires, whispered conversations behind glass. Harrison never left the hospital. He didn't check his stock portfolio. He didn't return calls from his lawyers. He sat in a hard plastic chair in the ICU waiting room, staring at the floor. Maya sat across from him and watched. She saw him get coffee and pour it for her, his hands trembling. She heard him arguing quietly with insurance companies, threatening to buy their parent corporations if they denied even one procedure. On the third night, Leo crashed. Alarms screamed. Nurses sprinted past. Maya screamed. Harrison stood frozen, unable to move. Through the glass, he watched them shock the small, fragile body of the boy he had just met, the boy who had his nose, the boy who was the last living piece of Catherine. Harrison Brown, the man who believed in nothing but the bottom line, dropped to his knees on the hospital linoleum. He clasped his hands together. "Take everything," he whispered to a God he hadn't spoken to since childhood. "Take the buildings. Take the money. Take the obsidian. Just don't take the boy. Please. Don't take the boy." As if in answer, the flat line on the monitor jumped. A rhythm returned. An hour later, Dr. Vane emerged, exhausted, rubbing his eyes. "He's stable," the doctor said. "But we got lucky. We found a match. A donor in Boston. The jet is already airborne. We operate at dawn." Harrison released a breath that sounded like a sob. He looked at Maya. She crossed the room and took his hand. She didn't hug him, there was still too much pain for that, but she held on. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't thank me," Harrison rasped. "I'm just the bank. You're the one who kept him alive this long." "You're not just the bank anymore," Maya said softly. "You're here." 6 months later, November rain returned to Manhattan, beating against Fifth Avenue and turning the city into a blur of steel gray and yellow taxi lights. Inside the Obsidian, everything had changed. The space itself was the same. The mahogany walls still gleamed. The baccarat crystal chandeliers still cast a golden glow. The jazz quartet still played Coltrane with reverent restraint. But the air was different. For years, the Obsidian had felt thin and charged, heavy with fear. The staff moved like prey animals, efficient and tense, always aware of the predator in the room. Tonight, Gustavo, the floor manager, was smiling. He stood at the host stand not like a guard protecting a fortress, but like a host welcoming friends. He checked his watch, but his brow wasn't slick with sweat. "He's here," the hostess whispered, nodding toward the entrance. A hush moved through the dining room, but not the terrified silence of before. This was respectful, curious, quiet. Harrison Brown walked in. He still wore a suit that cost more than a mid-size sod. Old habits died hard, but the armor had softened. The tie was a calm blue instead of his usual aggressive red. His silver hair, once lacquered into place, was brushed back loosely, but the real change was in his eyes. The predator's glint, the constant search for weakness was gone. In its place was weariness, yes, but also something warmer, steadier. He didn't march to table 4. He walked. He nodded to the coat check girl. "Good evening, Alice." He paused to admire the floral centerpiece. When he reached the king's table, he sat down and did something he hadn't done in 30 years. He waited. 10 minutes later, the heavy oak doors opened again. Maya Lindley stepped inside, holding the hand of a boy who looked like he was vibrating with energy. Maya looked radiant. The shadows beneath her eyes were gone, the exhaustion of 3 jobs. The weight of medical debt, the constant fear of loss had vanished. She wore a simple, elegant navy dress, her hair loose and falling over her shoulders, just as it had the night she stood up to him. But the real miracle was Leo. 6 months earlier, Leo had been a ghost of a child, blue-lipped, weak, carried in his sister's arms like something fragile that might shatter at any moment. Tonight, he was pink-cheeked and bursting with energy, tugging at Maya's hand as his eyes darted around the fancy restaurant with the wild curiosity of a healthy 9-year-old. "Grandpa!" Leo shouted. The words shattered the refined quiet of the dining room. A few diners turned, startled. In the old days, Harrison would have had a child removed for sneezing too loudly. Harrison Brown stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He didn't care. Leo let go of Maya's hand and ran straight into him, wrapping his arms around Harrison's legs in a fierce hug. Harrison crouched down, his knees popping slightly, and hugged the boy back, pressing his face into Leo's shoulder. "Hello, Leo," Harrison said, his voice thick. "I see you brought your running shoes." "Dr. Vane says I can run now," Leo announced proudly, pulling back to look at him. "He says my new heart is like a Ferrari engine. That means I'm fast. I bet I'm faster than you." Harrison laughed. It was a rusty sound, like an engine being started after decades of silence, but it was real. Maya approached the table, smiling. She leaned in and kissed Harrison on the cheek. The gesture still surprised him every time, sending a familiar wave of unworthiness through his chest. "You look tired," she said as she sat. "Board meeting run long?" "The board is adjusting," Harrison replied with a wry smile. "They're not used to a CEO who liquidates 40% of the company's real estate portfolio to build pediatric wings in public hospitals. They think I've gone senile." "And what did you tell them?" Maya asked, unfolding her napkin. "I told them if they didn't like it, they could resign," Harrison said with a shrug. "I own the majority shares, and I have a new vice president of operations who's very persuasive." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And who would that be?" "You," Harrison said calmly. "As soon as you finish your degree." Maya laughed and shook her head. "Let's get through dinner first. Then we can discuss my hostile takeover of your company." The service began, and this was the true test of the new Obsidian, Timothy. The waiter who had once hidden in the walk-in freezer just to avoid Harrison approached the table with a water pitcher. His hands shook slightly, muscle memory from years of fear, but he held his ground. As he poured water into Harrison's crystal goblet, a tiny splash landed on the base of the glass. Barely noticeable. A microscopic mistake. Timothy froze. His eyes flicked from the water to Harrison, bracing himself, waiting for the explosion, the humiliation. Harrison looked down. He picked up his napkin. Timothy flinched, but Harrison simply dabbed the water away gently. Then he looked up and met the young waiter's terrified eyes. "It's a crowded room tonight, Timothy," Harrison said softly. "Hard to maneuver. You're doing an excellent job. How is your mother? Is she recovering from her hip surgery?" Timothy's mouth fell open. Yes, Mr. Brown. Thank you for asking. She's doing great." "I'm glad to hear that," Harrison said. "Please tell the chef we'll have the tasting menu. But swap the foie gras for mac and cheese for the gentleman in the sneakers." He nodded toward Leo. "Right away." "Sir." Timothy walked away, his shoulders loosening for the first time in 5 years. As dinner went on, the conversation flowed easily. No business. No stock prices. No power plays. They talked about Leo's school. About Maya's art classes. She had started painting again, finally picking up the brush her mother had been forced to put down. "I found something," Harrison said quietly during the main course. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. "I was going through my safe. I thought I'd burned this years ago. But I suppose some part of me couldn't." He slid the photo across the table. It showed him and Catherine in the West Village. 1999, soaked from the rain, standing beneath a broken awning, laughing at something the photographer had said. Harrison looked young, unburdened, deeply in love. Catherine looked exactly like Maya. Maya touched the photo, her fingers trembling. "I've never seen this one." "She was the only person who ever made me laugh like that," Harrison said quietly, staring into his wine glass. Until Leo." He looked up then, his steel-gray eyes filled with a regret so deep no amount of money could ever erase it. "I can't fix it." "Maya," he said, his voice rough and worn. "I wake up every morning wishing I could go back to that coffee shop and make a different choice. I wish I'd never opened that letter from my father. I wish I had stayed in the rain with her." "I know," Maya said softly, reaching across the table and covering his hand with hers. "But I promise you this," Harrison continued, tightening his grip on her fingers. I will spend every day I have left trying to be the man she believed I was. The Catherine Lindley Foundation is fully funded. We broke ground on the Chicago branch this morning. No family will ever have to choose between paying rent and saving their child's heart again. Not while I'm breathing. Leo, sensing the weight in the air, looked up from his mac and cheese. Grandpa, are you sad? Harrison looked at the boy with his nose, the boy whose chest held a heart Harrison had moved heaven and earth to find. No, Leo, Harrison said, wiping a stray tear from his cheek. I'm not sad. I'm just late. I'm very late to the party. But I'm glad I finally made it. Can we get dessert now? Leo asked, focusing on what truly mattered. Harrison chuckled, the heaviness lifting. Yes, we can. He signaled to Gustavo. The chocolate soufflé. 3 of them. Excellent choice, Mr. Brown, Gustavo said, beaming as they waited. Harrison looked out the window at the rain-slicked streets of New York. His reflection stared back at him from the glass. He didn't see the titan of industry anymore. He didn't see the man feared by waiters and executives alike. He saw a grandfather. He saw a father. He saw a man who had been given a second chance he didn't deserve and who was terrified of wasting even 1 second of it. He looked back at the table. Leo was trying to balance a spoon on his nose again, laughing. Maya watched him with pure love in her eyes, the same look Catherine used to give him from across a crowded room, for the first time in 30 years. The silence inside Harrison Brown wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. He lifted his glass of water-smudged fingerprints and all and raised it in a silent toast to the empty chair beside him. I'm taking care of them, Cat, he thought. I'm taking care of them. The soufflés arrived, steaming and rich. Leo cheered. Maya smiled, and Harrison Brown, the man who once believed dignity was something you bought, finally understood that it was something you built, one kindness, one apology, one family dinner at a time. Harrison Brown spent a lifetime building a fortune. But it took losing everything to realize he had been the poorest man in the room. Because you can buy a building. You can buy a bottle of wine. You can even buy a hospital wing. But you cannot buy the love of a family that has to be earned. Maya didn't fight fire with fire. She fought it with truth. And by doing that, she didn't just save her brother's life. She saved her father's soul. It makes you wonder how many people are walking around with billions in their bank accounts, but nothing in their hearts. And how many of us are rich in ways money can never touch. If this story moved you, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more stories about karma, redemption, and the secrets people keep, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a video. I'm curious. Do you think Harrison deserved a second chance? Or was 23 years too late to say sorry? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.